Hey everyone, I'm Marielou Mandl, and this is the After Buzz. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia after show. This week we had an AIDS thing, we had a daughter thing, and we have a one host on the panel thing. Isn't that right, guys?
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Here come the hot stepper. I'm the lyrical gangster.
Oh my gosh, guys, it's been so long since I've been at AfterBuzz, and I'm so excited to be back. I was specifically really excited to be back tonight because I thought I was going to have a girl date with Danica Kennedy, but she got caught in Laurel Canyon somewhere. So if you have her on social media, tweet at her, send her our love. Also, maybe this is payback because she did a solo show last week and now it's my turn. Maybe that'll be a theme. We'll do a solo show with Danica, a solo show with me. Next week, maybe it's Mike. And who knows, maybe week 4, we'll bring back JoJo Doyle. What do you think? Yeah? Yeah, guys? Yeah? Well, I think Josh in the booth agrees. So I'm not totally alone, but this week, let's talk about It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And this episode was The Gang Goes to a Water Park. And I feel like I'm trying to go to a water park, but I'm going to keep my jacket on because it is winter. Even though it's winter in LA, it's not that cold. So we've got the gang heading to a water park. And you know, when the gang goes on destination episodes, it's my favorite. We had the ski resort. We've had them go all sorts of places. This week, they're going to Aquamania, which is a water park in Philadelphia, according to the signage that they had built in there. We start the episode with the gang in line before the park opens, and we kind of learn what everybody's there to do. Everyone always has a thing, and we figure out a little bit about what everybody's up to. And the big thing is the water disease free. They want to get into all of the rides before everyone else does because they want to make sure they're not swimming in pee water, which I guess is always the concern when you are at a water park, is it not? So we've got Dennis, who's trying to go after moms. Of course, he's got an angle. He says that the water's already diseased no matter what. It's been diseased forever. They never clean it. So he's just there to like get some ass, pretty much. We've got Mac, who has a bracelet for the water park. He's never paid admission, or he hadn't since he was younger. And, he seems to know the ins and outs of how this park works, which is always surprising when they get into the trouble that they get into later. He also has a very serious message to everyone to not put your buttholes on the drains, even if it feels good and you think it's going to feel good. But that becomes his message to everyone to not do that because somebody did that and their insides got sucked out and it's really graphic. And so his message is to not do that. So, that's Mac. Mac always with some butt stuff. Dee's got her urine tester. She's got a little vial that she tests water with. And then we have Frank and Charlie, and their plan is to get through all of the rides in the park before everyone else, or as quickly as possible, really. So let's start with Mac and Dee. This is so funny because there's always kid rides, and I love going to theme parks, and sometimes even the kid rides I want to go on there, but you're too tall, and they're built to not hold an adult-sized person, so you shouldn't go on them, probably because it's dangerous. But Mac and Dee do what they want, as the gang does, even though the guy who's running the ride says don't do it. But in true theme park fashion, in true water park fashion, the person's like, don't do it. Don't do it. All right, fine. I don't even care. And they go down the ride, and he doesn't bother calling security. He doesn't bother asking anybody to, get them out of there. He just sends them through and doesn't bother to check if they make it out the other side. So, of course, they have to get stuck. They have to get stuck in the slide. So Mac has his bracelet on, and this bracelet that he made a big deal about never taking off so he could continue going to the water park for free is what gets them stuck in the slide. So Mac goes down first. He's stuck in the slide. Dee comes through, and then she's stuck behind him. And now we just know kids are going to keep piling up behind them. Of course kids are going to keep piling up behind them because that person who's at the top running this ride, the nerd, is not checking to see if people make it down the other side. He's getting paid minimum wage or less to work this summer job at the water park. He does not care. So the comedy ensues. Kids just keep piling up behind them, and we meet The first kid that comes down, his name is Sherman, and he becomes kind of a through line throughout the rest of the episode that ends up helping them get out in the end. So the kids run into them, and we come back to them in the slide, and there's a window, like a little just like a little window that sees out of the slide, and the sun's going right into Dee's face. And then Mac tells her, like, oh my gosh, God put that sun there. If he put it there, it was for a reason, so you should just accept it. Because Mac, again, with his God stuff and his gay stuff, that's a Mac thing. It's a Mac thing, and I love it coming back into this season of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So they're in there, and Mac decides also to give a lesson to the children to make sure they know, to pass on the message that they need to cover up their butthole from the drains. Cover your butthole, kids. Of course. Why does Mac always say weird things to children? Because it's so funny. It's so funny. He has to do it for our entertainment. It must happen. And then we cut to some kid in the back says, I gotta poop. Oh no, I gotta poop. And this is while they are trying to pass another kid over them to go out and get help. So the kid says he got to poop, and then we cut away. We see the kid get spit out of the slide, and he is face down in the water, passed out. The employees see him, don't care, and it's just so funny. I think that was one of the few moments in this episode that I actually laughed out loud. It was just, of course they're gonna put a kid face down in the pool. Like, I hope he's okay, right? I'm sure he's okay. But for the comedy of it, yeah, there's worse things that's happened in this show. Kids keep piling up behind them, and Dee checks on her vial. And at this point, it's later in the episode, her vial is blood red. The vial that she used to test the urine in the water. So, of course, it's blood red because there's no more water even coming down. And there's a pile of kids that are just pretty much peeing on them through most of the episode. And then Dee, not realizing this at this point, I'm assuming that they've been in the slide for a few hours at this point, and she's like, "I'm really sorry, Mac, but I've got to pee right now." And he's like, "No, don't pee." He's like, she's like, "Actually, I'm already peeing on your shoulder." And she's like, "I don't understand how you guys are all holding your pee." And all of them, like Mac says, "Oh, I peed as soon as I got in the slide." And then all the other kids are like, "Yeah, that's what I did too," because water parks are gross. Water parks are so gross. So they try to come up with a plan, and this is how they actually get out. They get Sherman to chew through the bracelet that is stuck. And this is one of those like club bracelets, or it's like one of those plastic ones that snap around, that are usually hard to get off. You have to cut them off. And Mac earlier in the episode had said that he couldn't rip it off. But the solution now is that Sherman will chew through the bracelet. So that works. They get out. They end up sliding out of the slide into another mess that was created by Frank and Charlie, which we will get into about their AIDS thing. They had an AIDS thing. That was their storyline. So when we start out with Frank and Charlie at the beginning of the episode, they are looking at a map of the park, and Charlie is like, we have to start at the top of the map and move all the way down, or to the north of the map and move all the way down. And then Frank is like, well, okay, we'll go to the north. And he's like, well, which way is north? I never know which way is north. He's like, oh, I thought north was up, like up, not the top of the map up. And those are the things that make me just love Charlie so much. I just love him so much. He's great. And so their mission is to get through all of the rides as quick as possible. So they're standing in line. They're not having it. They're not liking the way this is looking. And then they see a woman guiding a child who's got leukemia. He gets to skip the line. And they're like, why does this dude get to skip the line? Oh, he's got leukemia. He's with a special program, usually like one of those Make-A-Wish people, and puts him to the front of the line. And this little side story, I used to work at a theme park. One of my first jobs was at Universal Studios in Orlando at the Back to the Future ride. And we always would have Make-A-Wish kids come in, and it just, like, it means something. It's serious business. Like, you get the feels because this kid wanted to do this. So yes, you go to the front of the line, you do it, you ride in any seat that you want that's safe for you, and have a great time because you're just there to make people smile and have a great time. But Frank and Charlie don't quite understand that this program is actually a very special, serious thing. They exploit it as they do. So we cut to them a little bit later, and they've decided to say that Frank has AIDS and push their way to the front of every line by saying Frank has AIDS. He's got AIDS, and not just like any AIDS. He wanted to specifically say that he's a vagina guy and it's not gay AIDS. And they keep going on about this, and the dialogue is so funny because it's very adult dialogue in a group of children, because this is at a water park, so it's ridiculous. And they crack me up every time. And I especially liked, which I wasn't here last week to talk about this with Danica, but in the last episode when Charlie is singing in the police station about the guy Frank that he sleeps with but doesn't touch him, but he's not his dad, but he slept with his mom. Like, I just was cracking up because their relationship is my favorite in the entire show. So we see that Frank and Charlie are making their way through the park, and they're successfully crossing off everything on the list. They're crossing it off. They're doing great. And they run into the kid with leukemia, and Frank just says, "Suck on that, river rat." Like, that was another laugh out loud moment for me because it's so unexpected but expected for these people. So they get up to this one ride and they see it. They think that they've completed the map, and they run into a ride that's not on the map. And it's called the Thunder Gun Express, like the movie. But the woman who's working at the park tells them, no, it's not open. There's no water. You can't go on that, but it'll be open next week. And they don't take no for an answer. They came there with a mission, and they want to ride all the rides in the park. And so they did it. They went up there. They climb up to the top, and they go down this weird dry slide. It's obviously going to be a mistake. Obviously, it's going to turn out hilarious. Frank goes down the slide, and you hear him screaming. It hurts so much. He gets down into the water where everybody else is in the park, and he's bleeding. His back is covered in lesions. There's blood everywhere in the water. And at this point, everyone in the park thinks that that's the guy who has AIDS. So now that there's all this red in the water, there's just chaos everywhere. Everyone's running in every direction because they think that the guy who has AIDS is bleeding in the water. And this is like a really wonderful end scene in the episode because there's red in the water, and then there's green in the water because that's like somebody urinating. It, like, the water would change colors. And then, just people, just chaos everywhere. And then you cut to underneath the water, swimming with all the different colors, is Mac going to sit on a drain. That's brilliant. It's brilliant. And that's how the episode ends. But before we finish up our after show here, I want to talk about my favorite storyline of this episode, which doesn't always, Dennis stories don't always get me. Like, Dennis sometimes rubs me the wrong way, but he's built to be that kind of character. But this episode utilized his desire to be selfish in the best way possible. So Dennis's mission during this episode is to hit on moms, the lonely moms at the water park who just want to get past the unending strife of motherhood. So he's laying on some chairs, and he sees this mom, like a hot mom, and he starts to eyeball her, and this other mom leans up and he pushes her back and says, "No, lay back down." So funny. So, because he just doesn't care. He doesn't care because Dennis does what he wants. The gang does whatever they want. Dennis goes over, talks to this mom. And as he's flirting with her, this little girl comes up to him and says, "Daddy, can I have $20? And this is not something that he had prearranged. And you see that pretty quickly in his face. So, because he's trying to play along and make this right, because it's messing up his game. So the little girl's like, "I'm so hungry. You didn't give me any money." And the mom that he's flirting with is starting to judge him a little bit. So he like gives in, and he's like, "Okay, honey, here's $20. And then she runs off. She says, "Thanks." And you see this moment where Dennis realizes this is one of his own. This is someone he connects with. This is another con artist. So he drops the woman he's flirting with and then goes over to the kid to talk with her. So he finds her in another place in the park, in one of the souvenir shops, and she's trying to steal some glasses. So he talks, the security guard is talking to the kid saying, you got to pay for these glasses. Dennis comes up and he's like, oh, honey, well, don't you have that $20 that I gave you? You should pay for those sunglasses. So she's like, okay, fine. Takes the money out. Then Dennis ends up taking the money and the sunglasses and walking away with it. And his message to the little girl later, because he's telling her, you've got a skill. You've got a skill. Let's work on this skill. And as they're talking about that con artist life, it's a lot about being a thief or an artist. He's like, do you want to be a thief or an artist? Because an artist takes what he wants when the people are looking right at him, much like I did with this after show. Isn't that right, guys? It's just me. It's still just me. And not intentional. I didn't intentionally steal the show, but I'm sorry, Danica. I'm sorry you got stuck in traffic. The kid is like, well, so they're talking about food, stealing food. And the kid says, oh, well, if I want food, I just like take a burger off of a table when these families aren't looking. And Dennis says, well, take one of these empty like French fry buckets and go up to the concession stand and say, hey, some kid knocked over my food, give me a refill. And then they usually do it for free. So he starts to mentor this girl to be an artist, a con artist, and not just a thief. And you get this really, really wonderful montage of them stealing things, which is intercut with the other storylines, which was really a really fun moment in the episode. And you just see them going to the lost and found, and the little girl's like, oh my gosh, this is my camera, and pulls out this big DSLR, and then Dennis is like, oh yeah, this is definitely my watch, because it's lost and found. You see it, you take it, I guess, like they're not identifying anything. And that park obviously has bad customer service. Their employees do not care. And then you see them filling a locker. They're filling a locker of all of these things that they are acquiring throughout the park, and they have a little key bracelet, as you do in a water park. And then they have a nice little moment where the little girl goes up to Dennis, and she has this water gun, and she says, hey, I took this, I got a little boy to give me this water gun because I told him I would kiss him in the parking lot, but then I took his wristband so he can't come back in. Isn't that great? And he's like, oh yes. And you can see all the pride that Dennis has of this little girl. And she says, hey, I gotta go. My mom says I have to go. Like, she doesn't ever listen to me. And she points out the woman that Dennis did not want to talk to in the beginning, who was in the way of the hot mom. She points out that mom and says, yeah, like she doesn't take care of me. She doesn't pay attention to me. I don't know, but I gotta go. I would like to give you this water gun as a gift. So she gives him the water gun. He's all touched, and now he's feeling up in arms and feels like he needs to go talk to her mom to say, your kid is special. You need to pay attention to this kid. So we don't often see Dennis go that route where he feels moved to defend somebody else. So he goes over to that mom and says, hey, you need to pay attention to your kid. And then a little boy comes up, and she's like, oh, honey, like, I'll be back. And he's like, oh, is that Abigail's brother? The little girl had named herself Abigail. And the mom's like, I don't have a daughter. And then we see that Dennis realizes, as she passed over the water gun, Abigail took the locker key. And instead of being mad, I see immense pride, because Dennis did what he needed to do that day, and he succeeded in mentoring this child from being a thief to an artist. And we don't always see that with Dennis. So I love that. I really enjoyed this episode, and I cannot wait to see where the rest of this season goes. I was a little surprised that we had a location episode so early, because we had a musical episode, now we've had a location episode. So if that's what they came out of the gate with for this season, I can't wait to see where it goes on from here. I really hope, personally, for a new Dayman episode, because it's been a minute. The musical episode last week kept making me think like, I really miss Dayman. I hope that they bring it back in some way and see what happens. Of course, there's going to be some like substance abuse, and there's probably going to be murder. There's going to be like all sorts of weird, bad things, because these kids are awful but amazing to watch. They're just I love them. I love them. Bless them so much. So that was this episode of this week's episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Now I'm a little like crazy because I'm so excited about this season. And you know, it's really bad when your phone's just going off and you're like, no, I have to pay attention to you. I'm like a bad date. I'm sorry. I'm paying attention to you. I promise. I am paying attention to you. But thank you so much for watching. If you want to find me on social media, you can find me on all platforms at Marielou Mandl. I've got really fun new Snapchat spectacles, so if you want to see how those work, you can find me on Snapchat, also at Marielou Mandl. Tune in next week, and hopefully we'll have a panel. That would be great. You can find my other hosts on social media by looking at past episodes. I've got Danica Kennedy, I've got Mike Skokoza, who's probably out modeling somewhere, and Jojo Doyle, who's not with us this season, but you can still find him on social media. He's doing really fun things on Facebook Live, so make sure you check him out, and we will see you next week. Thanks for watching.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.